to review how to obtain things from God. Hello, Vincenzo. I looked at your name and I saw your email and I was wondering, I don't remember him. Did we go to school together or something? The last name seems familiar. All right. A very heavy hitter. Why do you change your name? Why do you do that? I think Bishop Sanborn would say you shouldn't do that. One time he told me that if you're going to write something anonymously, you shouldn't write it. You know how some people write things anonymously? I forget why he said it, but it certainly draws away from the efficacy of what you're saying. All right, so anyway. Nothing in the world will happen unless it be the will of God. If you're persecuted, it's God behind your persecution. Read here. If you're well off, if you're well emotionally or physically, it's God behind it. And if you're sick, it's God behind your sickness too. If you receive something in the future, it's only because God permitted it to be given to you. And if He didn't want you to have it, you wouldn't have it. Therefore, there's no need to be worried or sad, because unless it's the will of God, it's not going to happen. And that works for good and bad. If you want something and God will not will it, you can be sad all you want, and you won't get it. And the only reason you won't get it is because it's not good for you. And so why are you sad? Don't be sad. But I can tell you this, if you keep praying, according to the prescriptions of the law of prayer, you will get something greater than what you desired. That is for sure. We are not forbidden to wish for money, material well-being, and whatever is necessary to maintain us in our position in life. No. But we must wish for these things in their order, their proper order. If we want our desires in this respect to be met without fail, we must first of all ask for the larger things, so that while granting the larger things, God may also add the smaller ones. Believe it or not, your cancer and your poverty are the smaller things. They actually are. We can take an example from the case of Solomon. God gave him the choice of whatever he desired, and he asked for a virtue, a spiritual gift, wisdom, which was needful for him to carry out his kingly duties. He didn't ask for riches or glory, judging that if God gave him such an opportunity, he ought to make use of it to obtain the greatest advantage. His prudence gained for him both what he asked for, wisdom, and what he did not ask for. Because thou hast asked this thing and hast not asked for thyself long life, which is health, or riches, wealth, behold, I have done for thee according to thy words. That is to say, I will willingly grant you wisdom because you have asked me for it. But I will also give you long life, good health, and riches, great wealth, as well, because you did not ask for any of them. The Lord said, yeah, and the things also which thou didst not ask, to wit, riches and glory. If you're sad because you don't have something, keep praying. But if you continue to be sad and downcast, It is because you want something that God, for the moment, has denied you. And so if you analyze it really, you want something that God is not willing to give you for the moment. But Jesus says, he knows our human heart. He says, keep asking. It's all over the Gospels. Keep asking. The Canaanite woman asked once, he ignored her. But think about it. You think at the end of the story, did he want to give her what she was asking for? Yes, he didn't change his mind by her second plea. She asked again, he ignored her again. But did God intend to give her what she was asking for? Yes. It was his intent to give it to her. He never changed his mind from the moment she began asking. In fact, it was his will to grant her this, and that is what inspired to ask for the deliverance of her daughter from a devil. Think about that. When she asked, Jesus, Son of David, do thou have mercy on me? He ignored her. He intended to have mercy on her. She asked again. He ignored her for the second time. But it was always his intention to grant it. And providentially, she continued to ask. And why is that? Because God intended to give her something, and she didn't coincidentally pray for it. She was inspired to pray for it. Read Romans chapter 8, and you'll see this spelled out for you. We know not what to ask for when we pray, but the Spirit, etc., etc. So, pause for a second and place yourself in the position of the Canaanite woman after the second rejection of the Son of God. Do you walk away and stop asking? Do you cry and complain that he didn't hear you and he'll never give you it? If she did that and she turned away, she would have never gotten what she wanted, because Christ required her to ask 3 times. He may require you to ask 8 more months. Blessed Claude gives us the example: if you've been praying for a year, a full year, know that your deliverance is at hand. Something to that effect. And so the point of this Canaanite woman story is this: from the very beginning, it was God's intention to deliver her. When he walked by her, don't you realize that God had put Christ and the Canaanite woman within the same 20 feet of each other? Providence dictated that that meeting take place in order for God to do his miracle and to demonstrate importunate prayer and discourage you from being discouraged. That gospel story is there to show you how God treats the prayer of petition. And so don't quit. If you cry, those tears add to the efficacy of your prayers, no doubt. And that's what Father Mueller tells us in prayer, the key to salvation. I will add this, that he also adds that if you get children to pray for your intentions, you add to the efficacy of those prayers as well. You know the book, Prayer, the Key to Salvation. And so, act like the Canaanite woman. Christ is ignoring you. Ask again. He ignores you more. The third time, he turns around and calls you a dog. Now you have to add, yes, I am a dog. In other words, I don't deserve this. I have sinned. I deserve nothing. But because of thy goodness, I continue to ask. It is not because of my goodness that I expect. It is because of thy goodness, Lord, that I expect to receive. I resolve never to offend thee again. I resolve to pray for my salvation every day. to love thee with all my heart, with all my mind, with all my soul, and with all my strength. And then, if it is not thy will to grant me this petition, I beg you to take this desire from me and grant me the peace and happiness that I would receive from having what I ask for. Father Claude de la Colombière, who's now a blessed, he said God will give you both. He said, if you say that in earnest, Lord, if it is not thy will, and I can honestly tell you personally in my life, I am at the point, believe me when I tell you this, everything I ask for, I say, Lord, if it is not your will, take it away. I have been so disappointed in my life that and I've been praying for years and years. And I've been disappointed for years. There were things I was praying for a few years ago. I can tell you I'm glad God didn't give it to me. And so now I look at it and I say, if it is not thy will, rip this foolish desire from my heart. That is the benefit of gray hair. That is the benefit of longer years. Young people without an extraordinary help know nothing. And that is why you see many evils in our world, one of which is divorce. You see a great man with an ungrateful woman. You say, what's going on here? That's because she's too ignorant to see the gift she has. Vice versa. A great woman with an ungrateful man. What's going on here? Somebody's too young and stupid to realize the gift that has been given him. I can say I'm at the point in my life. I took my blood pressure the other day. My blood pressure is normally 115 over 70, sometimes 65. I was up and about getting stuff at the store. I sat down, you know those stores, they have those things. They're never that accurate. Blood pressure is a funny thing. If you're up and about, you know, it's going to be higher. Your pressure is higher. Anyway, by the way, in the UK, a normal blood pressure, the top number is 150. The AMA in the United States, 120. If it's 130, give me a break. Whenever I go into the doctor's office, my blood pressure is 130 over 80. This is a little high. I said, wait till I leave. Because I have a monitor at home. Wait till I leave. I guarantee it's going to be 120 over 70 over 75. You know the nurse that comes in first? She says, it's a little high. I said, yeah. Anyway, I never had hypertension. It doesn't run in my family, but I know people who have had it. So anyway, why did I bring that up? Oh, so I took it. And the point is, my blood pressure is so normal now, you know, it's like... And one of the reasons I think is this. I am literally resigned. I gotta tell you the truth. I mean, if God wanted me to get smashed by a crush today, smashed by a crush, I didn't get enough sleep, smashed by a truck today, you know what? I just hope it'd be painless. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to go out and get hit by a truck. But what I'm saying is, there are things that I want. This is what I'm saying. There are things that I want so badly that I'm just tired of making myself so dissatisfied that I want them to a fault, and then if it's not the will of God because he wants something better. Years ago I was praying for something so hard. I was so frustrated. I look back now, I just thank God this morning during my morning prayers that he didn't give it to me. Better things come into your life. Better circumstances and situations change. And then you realize, wow, God really knows what he's talking about. We're stupid. We're so stupid. And so life teaches you, like you go on with life and you say, I know better. I'm going to give God more credit. And he tolerates our stupidity to a degree. It says it in this book. He'd rather tolerate your complaints. God knows what he's doing. Do not be sad about anything. And if you're sad, use that sadness for kneel time. God answers Nemail. I saw that once. I thought that was pretty cool. Nemail, on your knees. So use those tears for your time in prayer, on your knees, begging. And those are very efficacious tears. Otherwise, they're just selfish. Tears are selfish. I can't have what I want. Come on. Let's grow up spiritually. Yes, that happens to me. But in the big scheme of things, I say in earnest, if it is not thy will, rip it from my heart. And you know what? He hasn't ripped it from my heart. And I should think, well, that I've learned all these things, that ask him in earnest to take it away, and he hasn't. That to me is, why would God, if I say that in earnest, won't he grant that petition? And so I keep asking for the petitions that I want, because I'm encouraged to continue to ask. I can't see God allowing me to ask for something repeatedly after I beg him in earnest, which is what Blessed Claude tells us to do. If I keep asking him and he just keeps letting me ask for something that he doesn't want me to have. Okay. So now God has his order for how he wants you to ask. If this is the order that God observes in the distribution of his benefits, we must not be surprised if our prayers have been so far unsuccessful. I confess that I am often, this is a priest speaking, I am often moved to pity when I see the eagerness of some people to give money, making vows of pilgrimages. I will fast, Lord. I will have masses said for the success of my business, my daughter's health, my husband's whatever. I am afraid, he says, these prayers, they say and get, are said, are of little use. Little use. This is a man who was so close to the Sacred Heart that he told St. Margaret Mary, get Father Claude. He's going, Claude de la Colombière. Get him in here. He will validate this. Okay? So he knows. He knows what he's talking about. He says, we who pray, we should make these offerings and vow our pilgrimages to obtain from God. Number one, this is what he tells us to pray for. Number one, the amendment of your life. Number two, the gift of Christian patience. Number three, contempt for the things of the world. Number four, detachment from creatures. Then he says, afterwards, they could pray for the return of health, success in business. God would then answer these prayers, or rather, he would anticipate them, like he did in Solomon. It would be enough to know, God knowing, their desires for God to fulfill them. Do you hear what he just told you? All you got to do is amend your life by prayer. Ask God for it. You can't do it yourself. Detach from creatures. How many things are we praying for that have to do with creatures? We should be attached to God, right? Then afterwards, God would anticipate these prayers and he would fulfill them. Okay? Please, don't forget this. Bishop Sanborn says, we forget spiritual things. You can read something on Tuesday, forget it by Sunday. Now watch this. Until we have obtained these first graces, amendment of life, Christian patience, contempt for the things of the world, detachment from creatures, Oh, I'm detached from creatures. Oh, recently, I completely detached from creatures. Can't tell you exactly. It would be taken out of context and perhaps even a scandal. But I am detached from creatures. I won't let anybody hurt me anymore. And so, what I realized is the human heart is so corrupted that even friends will sometimes hurt you. Let's put it nicely, okay? And that goes for all of us. If you tell someone you're going to call them back and you don't, you've hurt that person. Okay? One of the things I set out to do in 18, Lord, when 19 comes, I'm going to treat each individual customer very specially. Now, I haven't done that 100%. Yes. So, but I realize, hey, these people expect me to call them back. I get so busy. So anyway, now, until we have obtained these first graces I just spoke about, anything else may be harmful to us. And in fact, usually is. That is the reason why we are refused. He just told you an absolute truth. That is the reason why you're refused. All the promises in the gospel, in the Psalms, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find. Whatsoever you ask when you pray. The Canaanite woman, the unjust judge in Luke 18. Keep praying, importunate prayer. Why are you refused? You're asking for good things, but you're not asking for the best things first. And so we have to be converted. One of the problems with the Novus Ordo is, I was Catholic and I was in the Novus Ordo. I was Catholic. Bishop Sanborn says, if you're in the Novus Ordo and you don't see a problem with the Novus Ordo, he says, I don't see how they can have the Catholic faith. Okay, so you're in the Novus Ordo, you see a problem. You see problems with the Novus Ordo. You see their faith system is ridiculous. Here's a problem in the Novus Ordo. Marriage is one of the things that's destroying our world. These marriages that are contracted, understandably, without proper preparation. People are walking around allegedly sacramentally married, and they're getting divorced now at record numbers. Okay? Our numbers are, it was 30 years ago, less than 50%. Now I understand it's around 70% marriage and divorce rate. Let's say you're in the Novus Ordo. You believe Francis is the Pope. Francis is the only one who has the power to annul a marriage. Annulment is this. God says, you were never married. Because you lacked something at the time of making that contract. You were never married. And the church presumes that your marriage is valid until the Pope says annulment. So few annulments ever existed. Now granted, this world has been so corrupted. How many marriages are valid today, right? Yeah, that's right. So, even Bishop Sanborn said in a sermon, he goes, granted, there would probably be more annulments today, obviously, because of this. I mean, when I got married in 1992, I had a sister who was divorced and remarried. I thought you can get remarried. If, God forbid, your marriage didn't work out. I hated divorce. I was so attached to the idea of having children, although I didn't have any. Because my parents were arguing once and my mother spoke about divorce. It scared the daylights out of me. To have your parents divorced. Anyway, I never wanted to be divorced, but I said, when I got married, I thought you could get divorced and remarried. I didn't think it was a good thing, but I thought, if some priest grabbed me and said, hey, listen, this is forever. This is for the rest of your life. You better know. First of all, I know myself. I would have been shaking. I would have started sweating. And I'll tell you what, if I had known that, I wouldn't have gone through with it. I gotta be honest. I didn't know. I mean, come on. I say these things publicly now because I'm past it. I'm now looking back at my life, like, critically and saying, that would not have happened had I known. And that dirty institution under Paul VI, John the 23rd, JP2, Benedict, and now Francis, that institution has caused me to be in this position that I'm in now. And so here's the point. You get married today under Francis while you retain most of the tenets of the Catholic faith. Do you know what could happen to you in 15 years from now? You could say, when I got married 15 years ago, I thought this. And today I no longer think this. And therefore, I'm going back to the revolving door to get another annulment. I mean, that is the only way. See, if you're in the Novus Ordo, and the reason I pick marriage is because, like I said, it's destroying the world. Even the marriages in the Novus Ordo are destroying the world because they're giving scandal to the whole Christian world by having so few children, by the obvious practice of birth control. And so, obviously, they're giving scandal to marriage. And so, if you're in that Novus Ordo, you may think you have the Catholic faith, but when your faith is tested to one of the most basic aspects of society, which is marriage, you will see that your Catholic faith will be thrown out the window as soon as you have difficulty in your marriage, because you will go there and you will convince yourself, when I got married, I thought this, Father. Sure, sign this book, sign these papers, and we'll get back to you. And then in the mail, 6 months or a year later, you will get your annulment. You see how it works? So you must be completely converted from Francis, that weirdo in the Vatican, who was pulling his hand away from people. That man is evil. Christ is king. Christ is the king. And so his vicar on earth is unworthy of adoration. However, since he holds the office of vicar of Christ, and he represents the person of Christ, he gets carried around on a sedia adjustatoria. I think that's what it's called. That's the seat that they hold the Pope on. And he wears the crown, the tiara. And he has the ring. And what you're kissing is, you're revering, reverence, the authority of the apostles. And so he has no authority to withdraw his ring from the reverence that the faithful have toward the apostolic authority that the papacy possesses. So when he pulls his hand back in a display of false humility, he's telling the world, I'm not worthy of this. But deep down, what he's doing is this. First of all, it's not about Francis. You see, you think he's humble, but he's not humble. He's making it all about himself. It has nothing to do with Francis, because Francis is going to get replaced. And Francis replaced another human being. It has nothing to do about the individual. It has to do about the dignity of the office, that he has no authority to abrogate. And so Francis is fake, okay? So if you're under Francis and you are thinking of marriage, or are married, or are thinking about getting an annulment, realize this, that in 10 years from now, after he gives you an annulment, when that sissy Dolan from New York becomes the Pope, I don't think a New Yorker would ever become the Pope, but if he did, you'll get a next annulment. Do you see how it works? You must get out of the Novus Ordo. You must get out of there, because what you're lacking is the Catholic faith. I thought I was Catholic. Now, I'm not going to say on video what I was led to believe when I was under the Novus Ordo, because it's just not appropriate. But I will tell you this. If you're under Francis, you are in a revolving door of immorality. You may think you're Catholic, but if you don't believe in the indissolubility of marriage, that's heretical. In fact, that's one of the 5 heretical beliefs of the Orthodox. Number 1, they reject the primacy of Peter. Therefore, they're not only heretics, they're schismatic. Number 2, they reject the existence of purgatory as defined by the Roman Catholic Church. Number 3, they deny the Marian doctrines, such as the Immaculate Conception, as defined by the Roman Catholic Church. Number 4, they reject the Filioque. What is the Filioque? That the Holy Ghost proceeds from the Father and the Son. And lastly, they reject the indissolubility of marriage. And therefore, you place yourself right in line with the Orthodox. If you should say, well, I believe all those 4, but the 5th one, I'm with them. I don't believe in the indissolubility of marriage. I reject that. Well, get online with the Orthodox, because that's what you do when you reject the indissolubility of marriage. The Catholic Church cannot, you call it an annulment. I don't think that's going to fly with God. In your conscience, you know that Francis is no good. You know something's wrong. And then you go to him for your annulment. You don't have the Catholic faith in its entirety. You are very much like a Protestant who loves God. We don't judge, but there are Protestants that really seem, I worked for a couple the other day, they seem like they really loved God. He said, you believe in the transubstantiation? I said, yes. What I should have said, and I told him, look, I said, listen, John 6:56, my flesh is true food, my blood is true drink. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, I said, read it. It's all true. And you know what I should have said too? The third thing I should have told him, you believe in transubstantiation too. Because on the night he was betrayed, he took bread into his hands and he said, take this. This is my body. What is that? He took bread in the first part of the sentence and then he said, eat this. This is my body. How could that be his body were it not for the truth of transubstantiation? Ignorance, right? At best. At best, it's ignorance. Perhaps deep down, it's a diabolical rejection of the truth. I don't know. But I realized Jesus said, this is my body. What don't you understand about that? Yes. No, we don't follow him. My friends who listen to this thing, we are all together. We love God. We're already together. We're together. Trust me when I tell you. So I want to share with you once again to dry your tears, get on your knees again, and pray resignedly to the will of Almighty God. If you're in a situation in which you find yourself where you're suffering an evil. Do you know sickness is an evil? It's a disorder. That's an evil. And so anything disordered is evil. So to be delivered from evil, this beautiful saint, Claude de la Colombière, okay, he's a saint of by acclamation. He's not canonized yet. What has been said of benefits can also be said of the ills from which we wish to be delivered. I do not desire wealth, he says, but I would be satisfied with not having to suffer hardship. I leave fame and reputation to those who want it, Lord, but I would like at least not to be an object of scorn. I can do without pleasures, Lord, but I cannot support pain. I have prayed and begged God to lessen my pain and suffering. But he will not hear me. It is not surprising, the priest says. It isn't surprising. You have secret ills far greater than the ills you complain about. But you don't ask God to deliver you from them. It is for this reason, if for this reason you had said half the prayers, let's say you prayed 5 times a day, if you prayed 2.5 times a day to be healed from your outward ills, if you had prayed half the amount of time to be delivered from your outward ills that you do. Let me read it how he said. I'm trying to paraphrase him. If for this purpose you had said half the prayers you have said to be healed from your outward ills, God would have delivered you from both a long time since. Poverty serves to keep you humble while your nature is proud, the scorn of the world to free you from your attachment to it, illness to keep you from the pleasure-seeking which will be your ruin. It would be hating you, not loving you, to take away your cross before giving you the virtues you lack. If God found some desire in you for these virtues, the good things that you need, he would give you them without delay. I think he gave me detachment from creatures. In fact, I know he did. It used to hurt me. I was so attached to people in my life, and now I'm not. It's a grace. Trust me when I tell you. People don't love me. You don't love me. You don't love me. I can't force you to love me. It's a grace. Trust me when I tell you. He would give you them without delay, and it would be unnecessary for you to ask for the other things. In other words, he would give you these virtues, and he's just said it would be unnecessary for you to ask for what other things? Give me health, give me this, give me that. That's what he's telling. Now, it is clear then that we do not ask, we don't receive anything because we don't ask enough. God could not give us little. He could not restrict his liberality to small things without doing us grave harm. Do not misunderstand me. I'm not saying that we offend God if we ask for temporal benefits or to be freed from misfortune. No. Obviously, prayers of this kind can rightly be addressed to him by making the condition that they are not contrary to his glory or our eternal salvation. Watch this. But as it is hardly likely that it would redound to his glory for him to answer them, he's saying, for him to answer these things would display his honor and glory. It would hardly be to our advantage to have them answered if our wishes end there. You know, like he's saying, like, if God gave you them, he's saying it would be, it is hardly likely that it would redound to his glory for him to answer them, or to our advantage to have them answered if our wishes ended there. He says, it must be repeated that as long as we are content with little, we won't run the risk of obtaining nothing. Let me show you a good way to ask for happiness even in this world. It is a way that will oblige God to listen to you. Say to him earnestly, either give me so much money that my heart will be satisfied, or inspire me with such contempt for this money, I no longer want it. Either free me from poverty, or make it so pleasant for me that I would not exchange it for all the wealth in the world. Either take away my suffering, or, which would be to thy greater glory, change it into delight for me, and instead of causing me affliction, let it become a source of joy. Lord, you can take away the burden of my cross, or you can leave it with me without my feeling its weight. You can extinguish the fire that burns me, or you can let it burn in such a way that it refreshes me, as it did the 3 youths in the fiery furnace. I ask you, Lord, for either one or the other. What does it matter in what way I am happy? If I am happy through the possession of worldly goods, it is you I have to thank. If I'm happy when deprived of them,
It gives you greater glory, and my thanks are all the greater. This is the kind of prayer worthy of being offered to God by a true Christian. When you pray in this way, do you know what will happen? First of all, you will be satisfied whatever happens. And what else do those who most desire this world's goods want except to be satisfied? Secondly, you will not only obtain without fail one of the two things you have asked for, either that God give you what you're asking for, or that He take the desire away, give you so much happiness without it. Listen to what He says. You will not only obtain without fail one of the two things you have asked for, but as a rule, He says, as a rule, you will obtain both of them. Stop right there. Many of you don't even believe that. You don't believe it. That's your problem. That's why you're all upset sometimes when you're asking for things. You don't believe it. Your faith is weak. You haven't meditated enough. You haven't asked. You haven't received this gift. This is not an intellectual decision. Let me be resigned to the will of God. No. This is a grace. And so you need the faith to believe this. Ask for that, and then ask for the grace to be resigned to His will and to pray in this way. And then He'll give it to you, without doubt. Secondly, He says, you will not only obtain without fail one of the two things you've asked for, but as a rule, you will obtain both of what you've asked for. Yes. God will give you the enjoyment of wealth, and so that you may possess it without the danger of becoming attached to it, He will inspire you at the same time with contempt for it. He will put an end to your sufferings, and even more, He will leave you with a desire for these sufferings, which will give you all the merit of patience without having to suffer. In a word, He will make you happy here and now, and lest your happiness should be an impediment to your spiritual life, He will let you know and feel the emptiness of it. Can one ask for anything better? But if such a great blessing is well worth being asked for, remember that still more is it worth being asked for with insistence. Read St. Luke chapter 18, starting in verse 2. Read the story of the Canaanite woman, and you'll understand this even better. For the reason why we obtain little is not only because we ask for little things, but still more because whether we ask for little things or a lot, we do not ask enough. You're on Facebook, Instagram, texting, phone calls, yapping away. You're wasting time. Pray. If you want all your prayers to be answered without fail and oblige God, oblige Him. Look up the word oblige and see what it means. It's making somebody do something. You know why you oblige God? Because He promised things. And He obliges Himself. And when you respectfully hold God to His word, He obliges Himself to answer it, to be truthful. If you want all your prayers to be answered without fail, and oblige God to meet all of your wishes, the first thing is never to stop praying. Those who get tired after praying for a time are lacking in either humility. I read this so many times, I already know. They are lacking in humility or confidence. Yep. And so do not deserve to be heard. You don't deserve to be heard. You would think that they expected their requests to be obeyed as commands. Surely we know that God resists the proud and shows His favors to the humble. Won't our pride allow us to ask for more than once? It shows very little trust in God's goodness to give up so soon and take a delay for an absolute refusal. Now watch this. I'd put big asterisks next to this. I don't know what it is, but it must be important. Once we have really understood just how far God's goodness extends, we can never believe that we have been refused. Don't ever believe that you've been refused. I don't care what you're praying for. Don't think that you've been refused, He says, or that He wishes to deprive us of hope. Rather, the more listen to this and take this home to the bank. Stop everything you're doing and listen to this. Rather, the more He makes us keep on asking for something we want, the more confident you should feel that you will eventually obtain it. Would you stop getting upset over these things? It's your defective human will. You must believe this. The more he makes us, did you hear that terminology? The more he makes you keep on asking for something. How does he make you ask for something? Read Romans 8, starting at about verse 20. I'm tempted to do it myself. Hold on a second. I'll read it, okay? Okay. Romans 8. I'm in verse 24. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man sees, why does he hope for? But if we hope for that which we see not, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit also helps our infirmity, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought. I'm in verse 26. But the Spirit himself asks for us with unspeakable groanings. And he that searches the hearts knows what the Spirit desires, because he asks for the saints according to God. Okay. If you read the Haydock commentary on that, God inspires your prayers, okay? Keep that in mind now. Let's go to this. Once we have understood God's goodness, extends, we understand his goodness, we should never believe that we have been refused or that he wishes to deprive us of hope. The more God makes you keep on asking for something you want. Do you hear that terminology? There's two players there. That's you and God. The more he asks, the more he continues to make you ask for the things that you want. This is the wording he used. The more he makes you keep on asking for something you want. Stop right there. Who wants it? Have you figured it out? Didn't I just read Romans 8? If you're asking for something and God is making you ask, who wants it? You know why? God doesn't change his mind. His will is set from all eternity. He wants what he wants. There are some things that he wants that he does without you asking. And then there are other things that are conditioned upon your asking. And it is his will to grant them. But if you do not ask him, you will not get them. And so it falls within his consequent will. As a consequence of your prayers, he grants them. You don't change his mind. The Canaanite woman did not change the Lord's mind when she said, Jesus, son of David, do thou have mercy on me. It was his will to grant her petition. She cooperated with the grace of God and prayed with insistence. And what did she receive? She received God's will, that her daughter be delivered from the devil. If it were not God's will that her daughter be delivered from that devil, it would have never happened. She could have begged repeatedly, day and night, day and night, day and night. Would have never happened. But since it was the will of God, and he made her ask for something that she wanted, rather the more he makes you keep on asking for something you want, the more confident Canaanite woman, the more confident you who view this, you should feel that you will eventually obtain it. Watch this. You can begin to doubt that your prayer has been heard only when you notice you have stopped praying. Then do you understand what that means? Your prayer is heard. From the moment you make the sign of the cross, from the moment you intend to pray, it is heard. You can begin to doubt that your prayer is heard when you stop praying. In other words, he hears everything you think and everything you say. If after a year, 365 days, if after a year we find that our prayer is as fervent as it was at the beginning, then we need not doubt about the success of our efforts. And instead of losing courage after so long a delay, interesting, he considers a year a long delay. Isn't that interesting? Keep that in mind. If after a year we find that our prayer, I'm on page 117 of Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence. If after a year you find that your prayer is as fervent as it was in the beginning, then we need not doubt about the success of our efforts, and instead of losing courage after so long a delay, we should rejoice, because we can be certain that our desires will be all the more fully satisfied for the length of time we have prayed. If our first attempts have been quite useless, we would not have repeated them so often, and we would have lost hope. But as we have kept on in spite of this, there is good reason, he says, to believe that we shall be liberally rewarded. Don't be weak in faith. He gives you a time frame, a year. And he actually says it's a long time. You know? So, I'm going to bookmark that, because that's something that has to be read frequently. Let me just show you what I do with these books. So I bookmarked that. Even though I put asterisks, I can't see those asterisks when the book is closed. But I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, wow. In fact, I just reminded myself today about the importance of don't listen. The world, the flesh, and the devil is working against your prayers. That's why stay away from people. Use holy water and get on your knees when you're discouraged and read that. Fight your own inclinations. Because those things are all disordered. They're not spiritually ordered. That's spiritual order, what I just read. Pray, pray, pray. Keep praying. And then you will find yourself one day to be liberally rewarded. Don't give up hope. Just keep praying. If you do not get exactly what you're asking for, you will get something greater. It's a rule. Don't lose courage. I'm sorry, I'm stretching. I'm tired. I hate getting up early. All right. Let's end this with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Joseph, pray.